Hear now God's word from the Gospel of Mark, the 9th chapter, beginning at the 2nd verse, the story of the transfiguration of Jesus. With the words we heard from Scripture about Moses going to the high mountain in our minds, let us now hear of this journey of Jesus with three of his friends. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John and led them up to a high mountain apart by themselves. He was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to him Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Peter did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud came a voice, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." And suddenly when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. And as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen, until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead could mean. This is the word of the Lord. Oh, come on. This is the word of the Lord. All right. There are moments in our lives when we come face to face with God. When the children of Israel encamped around Mount Sinai, Moses went up on the mountain to meet with God, to commune with the Lord. And when he returned with the 2 tablets of the law. His face shone with the reflected glory of God. The people could not even look upon him. They were afraid and terrified of the light of the Lord. They were blinded by God's glory. His communion with the Lord on the mountain transformed him. For it is true, you cannot meet with God and ever be the same again. Peter, James, and John went with Jesus up on a high mountain. And the face of Jesus was changed before them. His face shone like the light of the sun. His clothes were dazzling white. And Moses and Elijah, who represented the law and the prophets, met with him there. A cloud covered them. And a voice from the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." And the disciples fell on their faces as if dead. They were terrified. They had seen the glory of the Lord. And the moment was for them a foretaste of Christ's resurrection and their own. But at the time, they could not understand what it meant. Well, we may not have been, we certainly have not been on the mountain with Moses or on the Mount of Transfiguration with Jesus and the disciples. Yet there are moments in our lives when we, now and then, are touched by God. Sometimes we're just too busy with our own projects, too preoccupied with ourselves to notice. The poet said, "The world is too much with us," and it is true. Preoccupied with the mundane, we do not see the sublime. We do not hear God speak. We do not catch sight of God's glory. A favorite author of mine is Annie Dillard, who says that our primary role in life is to witness the glory of God. Now, in her writing, she sees God's glory reflected in creation. "Consider the songbirds," Dillard writes. We do not use the songbirds, for instance. We do not eat many of them. We cannot befriend them. We cannot persuade them to eat more mosquitoes or to plant fewer weed seeds. We can only witness them. And if we were not here, they would play to an empty house, as do all those falling stars in the daytime. And Dillard writes, "This is why I go on walks, to keep an eye on things." When we keep an eye on things, when we tune our ears to hear God's whisper, when we learn what it is to feel the touch of God brushing across our cheek, we catch some scent of the holy, we know that we have met God. And I believe a part of faith is learning how to be open to the grand gestures and the small intimations of God who is present with us. Present in flower and field and laughter and tears and corn patch and empty church and quiet and company and joy and sorrow with friend and foe. God is here. And these moments of holy awakening are like a warm fire on a cold, snowy winter day. The Scriptures bear witness to one thing. The whole of the New Testament bears witness to one thing, that God comes to us in Jesus Christ and looks upon us with the face of love. We had as our call to worship, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth as the Father's only Son. And when we are brushed by God, when God comes to us, God changes us. Yes, it is not always easy to discern God's presence. Moses spent the rest of his life explaining to the children of Israel everything that he had seen and known and learned and heard. And when Peter and James and John heard the voice of God and experienced that cloud, that mysterious cloud enveloping them, they were terrified, they fell down, they were speechless, they did not know what to say. For it was for them a kind of death and resurrection. They did not understand what they had experienced, they were silent. And Jesus said, "Don't speak of this until you see the Son of Man rise from the dead." Why would he say that? Because it was only in light of the resurrection that they could possibly understand what it was they'd experienced on the mountain. For when they looked back on their whole relationship with Jesus, the miles they'd walked through Galilee, the teachings, the healings, the mysterious words that he spoke, his own being and presence, and seeing that moment on the mountain when he was transfigured before them, they could only understand what they had seen and heard in light of his death and resurrection. And they looked back and they realized that in that moment on a high and windy mountain, they saw the risen, resurrected glory of the Lord present among them. And then they knew. And then they understood that wherever they went, either on a high mountain or down in the lowest valley, even in the valley of the shadow of death, that Christ in his glory would be present with them. And he would bless them with his peace. And for that moment on, they were changed. For after the resurrection of Jesus, a time had come for them to speak of all that they had seen and heard. You know, sometimes it may take a whole lifetime for us to be able to look back over our lives in the light of the resurrection of Jesus to understand how it was, how it is, how it will be that God is with us. Our culture does not make much room for holy talk. Oh, there's a lot of jabbering about God, but it sounds like Peanuts, Charlie Brown's teachers and parents, wah, 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 wah. Our culture does not make much room for authentic, real God talk. Sometimes it is only as we look back over our own experiences that we can see clearly in the light of the resurrection how God has been present with us, how God has changed us, how God has opened a new future for us, and we need a place to talk about such holy moments. We need a community in which we can share our faith, our hearts, our experiences of God. And being a church together is a part of what it means to be that community where we encourage one another in true God talk. So I have invited some of my young friends in the church to speak about the holy moments of their lives, where they have experienced life in the presence of the Lord.
Maddie Downs, and I'm a senior at Pike High School. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7 reads, "We walk by faith, not by sight." And that is exactly what I do. However, up until I was in high school, that verse had absolutely no meaning to me. Before high school, I came to church because my parents said I was supposed to. I went to Sunday school for the pretzels when we watched a movie, or the candy we got at the end of game class, or to make a Christmas ornament card. Naturally, my mom made me join choir, so I came to sing too. Never once was there a question of if I wanted to be there, or if I was coming because I wanted to. I came because I was supposed to. Just like everything else I had done with my beliefs leading up to high school, I joined Niners because I was supposed to. I completed Niners and started Trek my sophomore year. The difference soon became that everything I was supposed to do and everything my parents made me do became everything I wanted to do. Through my busy schedule of extracurricular activities, community service, friends, family, and of course Texas football, I still managed to make time to grow in my faith. I came to church, still just going through the motions because I never really knew what it was like to feel God or to need God. In January of my sophomore year, that all changed. In January of my sophomore year, I learned what pain is. A girl I had been friends with since 7th grade found happiness on the other side of a rainbow. 1,000 times I asked myself, how could she do that? Or better yet, how could God let her do that? It brought so much hurt, and it made me question my faith. It took me through a period of time where I was convinced that God was some being who did not care about me or how I felt. But then one day, lying in my bed with the Bible that Brian had handed me almost a year before, I came across 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, and for the first time, it spoke to me. We walk by faith, not by sight. I probably read it 1,000 times that night and every night for weeks. Suddenly it clicked. It made sense. Last year, I got the opportunity to go on the high school mission trip to Chicago. Although I was inspired every day by something new, nothing got to me like when we visited the synagogue. The last time I had been in a synagogue was to say goodbye to my friend. Sitting there in just an everyday ordinary chair, learning about the history of the Jewish faith and their customs and traditions, I felt her sit down next to me. It brought me so much emotion because I knew that she was happy and that she was okay. In that moment, I felt God. Through her, my faith became entrusted in Him. I started walking by faith, not by sight. I put all of my hope, all of me, into Him. He taught me not just to believe in Him, but to trust in Him. There is a reason He took my friend from me on that gloomy, rainy January day. Since then, coming to church has been a personal choice. I've gotten involved as much as I can, whether it's through volunteering, Wednesday night youth groups, or spending a week working through Christ with some of the most amazing people I've been blessed to know. I continue to be inspired by my home, school, and community. Every time I walk through the doors of this church, I learn something new, not only about God, but about myself. Next year, I'll be 1,000 miles away attending the University of Houston to study elementary school education. But because of the support of my family, friends, and the congregation of this church, I know that I am ready. I'm ready because I walk by faith, not by sight.
As a second semester senior, I kind of expected life to cruise as if it were carefree. However, with so many things like baseball season, AP exams, scholarship apps, and future school plans, I found myself under stress. And as ways to deal with this stress, I tend to do things like bite my nails and work out. But these don't necessarily eliminate stress, they're just ways to cope with it. Over the course of my high school career, and due to what I've learned here at Second Presbyterian, I have found that my most effective remedy of stress isn't physical, but spiritual. Before I go on and say, I would like to share a little bit about myself and how I discovered this solution. My name is Thomas Baldwin, and I'm a senior at Carmel High School. I have attended Second Presbyterian since pre-K and have loved the relationships and experiences that have come along with it. But from ages 4 to about 13, I pretty much failed to pay attention to anything that was said at Sunday school. The only thing I could ever think about was getting in the gym as soon as possible afterward to play basketball. But hey, I think I've changed. When I got to high school and started participating in Niners led by my awesome youth pastor, Brian Shivers, I began to pay attention to what was said. This sort of cracked open the door to my faith, and out of interest, I began attending Second Presbyterian more frequently. And the following summer, I went on a mission trip to Puerto Rico. I created some great relationships with the kids down there and met some inspiring people that live by little to get by. I was also in good spirits because I knew I was making a difference in helping others in need. This trip overall was very inspiring for me, and it was truly the first time I felt the power of God. After that trip, I began to prioritize church and my spiritual life so that I could build a strong spiritual foundation. After Niners in my sophomore year, my life quickly became hectic. My junior year of high school, I was balancing a full course load in school on top of starting positions on the baseball and football team. And as stress built up, I began to feel overwhelmed. I felt like it was too much and that I should have not taken up so much responsibility. However, I realized that in this time of stress, I could apply to what I've learned here at Second Pres. I specifically remember what I learned from Brian and Tyler and used this as a way to eliminate stress. From their lessons, I knew that there was a deeper meaning in God's plan and behind the struggle. So in order to keep the struggle off my mind, I would sort of vent to God in prayer each night. This helped me look for deeper implications behind my life when it was pushing my limits. Through myself and Him, I was able to tear down walls of stress and maintain a happy and faith-driven lifestyle. So I'd like to say thank you to my family, to Second Presbyterian Church for the opportunities it has given me, like mission trips and weekly youth group, and to Brian, Tyler, and Stephanie, my youth leaders that have taught me how to approach my faith. Because without a spiritual foundation, I don't think I could have remained sane while taking on so much responsibility. Because as a teenager, reality's complexity can be frightening, but a spiritual foundation functions as an anchor, and it broadens my perspective. It opens my heart and mind up so that I can continue to expand in my faith. So as the future ensues, I am confident in my ability to maintain a stable faith. I am blessed to be a member of this church, so thankful for those who have helped me grow spiritually. All in all, I have learned that investing your spirit into the Word of God can explain, heal, and inspire.
I'm Maddie Higgins, and I'm a pretty privileged girl. I live in Westfield, Indiana. I'm finishing up school at one of the best public schools in the state, and this fall I am attending Indiana University. I have 2 loving parents and 2 younger brothers who also double as my best friends. I'm a lifetime member of this wonderful church, and I can't tell you how blessed I am by being one. I've made 4 of my very best friends here, and in sharing everything about myself and about my faith journey with them, I've made countless unforgettable memories. I have been on many retreats and mission trips with them, both of which trips have been led by the 3 youth ministers, Stephanie Bewley, Tyler Wolfkale, and Brian Shivers, all of whom I am also blessed and greatly impacted by. All in all, I've got a lot to be thankful for. But I often forget to remember to be thankful for all that I have. I get so wrapped up in school, work, and other unimportant things. I put much of my focus upon myself and what I need to get done. I forget that God is doing bigger and better things than I could ever imagine, and I still feel the need to control every single moment of my life. I have grown accustomed to planning everything about my life, from the classes I take in preparation for college, to when I will take study breaks to socialize with friends, to when I will just sit still and breathe. I honestly cannot go a day, an hour, a minute, a second without thinking about what I still have left to do. But I think this is part of the problem. It can't always be about me, and it shouldn't. In Proverbs 19:21, it is said, "Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand." So I will continue to struggle to let God be sovereign and let myself just be. I will give thanks for everything he has given me and everything that he has in store for me. And as impossible as it may sound, I will live in the present and refrain from focusing so much on the past and the future. I'm obsessed with inspirational quotes, so much that I have a journal chock full of them, as well as albums of pictures of inspirational quotes that I find on the internet. I recently discovered one that perfectly describes what I'm going to try and do to let God be sovereign. I think it will help me enjoy the present and all that is in it. And I have written this quote down on many occasions, and I even have it saved as a background on my phone. It's short and it's sweet, and it goes like this. "And if the music is good, you dance.